Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Saludo mi gente, and welcome to another session of my Final Shot Productions Q&A session. Today, my guest, Clayton Allis. He is
Hey,
the editor of Swindled. He's also the editor of two of my other films, Rattled and Ay Que Susto. So we're going to be chit-chatting with him about the editing process and a couple of other things, all right? So welcome.
sure.
Saludo.
Salute.
This is always good to stir up the
Yeah, I mean, get loose. Yeah.
So here we go. So Clayton, first question. Last week we premiered Swindle on the channel. And you, of course, the editor on that. Anything,
Right.
anything stands out from putting that piece together? You know, obviously it was a little throwback to the noir genre, and there was very little dialogue. Um,
Right.
but anything that comes up that
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying. I remember we actually make quite a lot of changes, even to this or the story as we were. And I don't know if we made changes to the story, but we sort of like, um, we came up with that whole newspaper bits, and right. That's is that, and all that. That was something we figured out later afterwards, right? Where that wasn't in the initial script, and So I know you guys shot that in pretty tight situation, like in a day or two. Like
right, we shot
you
that.
didn't have a lot of time for that. Yeah.
Right. We shot that in two locations. The way that came about, that I call that my pandemic piece because
Right.
that's what it was. I mean, we were just coming out of the COVID, and we were about to shoot something, but my sound guy wasn't available. But
Mm,
my cinematographer was available, and she said, "Listen, I got a camera and
right.
a schedule like of 3 weekends to shoot." She goes to me, "We should shoot something." So then I told her, "You know what? I'm gonna write something. Give me a weekend to write it, and the following
Yeah.
weekend, let's shoot something." The
Yeah.
problem was that we shot in two locations, one being Jersey and the other one being the Bronx.
Right. And the park, right? And yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's interesting. I feel like that with at least the three of your films that I've worked on, you know, there's uh the process is interesting because I guess Ike Susto, I was there for a couple days of the shooting, but for the other ones, I wasn't really there when we shot. So you'll kind of send me the script and the footage, and then I feel like you're pretty open to sort of like you know uh, continuing the evolution of the movie as it goes along afterwards. It's not like, well, that wasn't in the script. I mean, because sometimes, because of the situation and it's low budget, we all know how that goes. Some things come out a little better than other things, and so you sort of have to work towards your strengths. So I think Swindle is a good example of that, where it was like some of the stuff worked better than other stuff, and we went with what worked, and then we added a few things later, to sort of like fill in the gaps. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, you went ahead, but I was going to talk to you a little bit about that. Um, do you prefer when you're editing? Do you prefer um, that director that already is married to the script and says, "This is how we're going to do it," or you like the idea of being a little open, having a little wiggle room where you can have a discussion with with the director about, maybe this,
Right.
what's your take on all of that?
Well, I think there's two different, you know, to be honest, in my case, a lot of the narratives, I don't edit as much narrative stuff. So, I'll do some narrative films with you. I do my own films, and I think that's fun because you sort of, I think those by the nature of it, it's a little more open. And you have to sort of adjust and feel how it's working. But more commercial things, it's usually much more planned out. So they have a storyboard, they have a whole thing, and they're expecting you to give them what they shot. So it's just a different. a different vibe, a different way of looking at it. But I think with narrative, um, the hardest part of editing narrative, or and also for the director as well, is sort of having to give up these some shots, or maybe you had some idea but it just isn't working, and a lot of times that process is difficult. Like no matter how many times you do it, it's always like all it's like not work, it's not working. Then all of a sudden, it's almost inevitably, it's like, oh, but what if we just remove this? And then all of a sudden it works, So I mean, and it doesn't matter how many films I've done. I feel like I go through that every single time, it's always like I'm trying to make this thing work, and then always it's like, oh, well, what if I just get rid of it? Oh, now it's not a problem. Now it works. So I think that kind of the kind of um I don't know, kind of editing is about like accepting what you have and figuring out how to make that work. Like I know there's a very editor thing, which is complaining about all the stuff you didn't get. Like that's a very like, I'm sure you've run into that with editors where they're like, well, why didn't you do this? Why don't you have the revert? Why don't you have this? And and as an editor, you always kind of feel that way because you see all the footage and you're like, inevitably there's going to be some shot and you're like, oh, why don't we have that shot? I need, so it's all about solving those problems, and you have to kind of embrace that, I think, as to really, when you're editing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. You bring up a pretty good point. How much of that is where you want to go toe to toe with the director and say, this freaking guy, man, I don't know. He never, he never, you know what I'm saying? How much of that, is you maybe bringing it up and a notch and saying, yo, my man, you really got to get better at, or do you choose another time and place to A, have that conversation because you think it's needed, or B, let's just, let me just do this and then
Yeah.
later have this conversation with this individual about this. Or you just say, freak it, this is what I got, this is what I'm working with, this is what I'm going with.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my basic tendency would be try to figure out a way to make it work with what
Okay.
you have. But we have had situations, uh, even with us, with our films, where we're like, we really need to get this one shot or two shots. I mean, that's not that uncommon.
Right.
You got to go back and shoot something you didn't get, or maybe the sound is terrible, or is there something for whatever it is, some technical problem, or just it's just not working, and there's just no way to really make it work the way you want. So,
Right.
but I think in general, like, did we shoot more stuff with Swindled? I can't remember.
No, no. As a matter of fact, we really have not shot. It's funny you say that, but in our 3 films that we did, we really didn't go back and reshoot.
We did with Ike Susto.
No, absolutely, because
Remember, we shot that ending.
yeah, that we knew, which
Yeah,
is interesting, right? Because I wasn't happy, so
right,
I knew, like,
yeah,
this is not a good payoff at all. So
right.
when you had the footage, it's not like you almost agreed with me, like, that's it. Like,
Yeah, no, no. Yeah, that one was
that
obvious.
work at all. You know,
We needed that ending
obviously we
scene
need, yeah,
with Tulisi, and then the twist at the end or
right.
whatever. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And
I mean, that was like a pretty hectic shoot, if I remember. They're usually pretty hectic, but that was like
no, that
particularly hectic, that one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That was a fun shoot. It was a hectic shoot. We're lucky we got the space that we did. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah. And remember, and looking back, I was like, the idea of not being happy with it, um, for me made sense because I was like, wow, this is not like, it's not really, it doesn't
Yeah.
drive what we wanted, and so for me, in a weird way, I felt happy that I could go back and revisit and retouch certain things so that we can bring it home a little harder. And that's what happened.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think, yeah, that was crucial for that movie. But you're right. The other two, we didn't do any reshoots. We just kind of, we had what we had and we made it work. But, I think, I think people don't, you can really do a lot when I think people don't, the thing that people don't understand about editing is, what, I think like what you're actually doing when you're editing is a lot of times you're making the performances. So you're really controlling the timing, the deliveries. So you're really like, it's much more subtle than people realize, I think. Especially with narrative stuff, they think it's like, oh, you just cut these shots together, but it's really about timing the dialogue, getting, making it seem, giving it, you can really create a performance actually that in a way wasn't there. Like you can really change the mood. Like someone may have been doing it as sort of flat, and you can actually, if you edit it the right way, you can sort of give it all this tension and
Mhm, mhm.
create these relationships with, like, when you cut away to someone's reaction. So you can do a lot, with, as editing is very, it's a huge, it's as important as any other step in the filmmaking process, as important as the writing or the shooting. And I don't think it gets quite as much
Yeah, I agree.
attention and credit. You think of the writing, the writing is like the creation of the idea, and then the shooting is, of course, all the work, and then the editing. But a lot of times the editing is a rewrite. It's like, it's basically a rewrite of the script. And you can, as like, I think how the Ike Susto we ended up with is pretty different than what was initially on the page. You know, and same even for, I think not so much with Rattled. Rattled was, I think, pretty, what
Yeah.
you wrote is what it was. That was a pretty straightforward, you know, a
But
pretty
like you
straight.
said, those performances needed to um it's interesting. This played at a couple of festivals, and to this day, I'm like, wow, I can't believe the reaction that it gets, right? You get the
For Rattled,
yeah,
or
you get
yeah, yeah,
you get the ahs, you get the gasping in the audience.
yeah, yeah,
Um, you get different takes, especially in the finale. There's this because there's a lot of gunfire and rattle,
yeah,
and that finale, you know, sometimes people get this reaction, this almost cathartic when they
yeah,
start applauding,
yeah.
and I'm
when
like,
she takes them out, yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
I'm like, holy
yeah,
shit, this is really, they're really, they're so in it, and they're so
yeah,
vested in the performances
yeah,
that it gets this reaction of applause and like, oh my god, and all this gasping, all
yeah.
this. Of course, it's a tribute to what you've done with the piece, but also the performances. And like you were saying,
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
if you don't edit it the right way, right? Um,
mm,
that performance sometimes, you get something, you go, I think I missed it, like,
yeah,
and you
yeah. I
want,
remember that the big the big moment, the big scene in that is when, obviously, when he comes over to the apartment, right, and then before he figures out, and the tension there, and I think that's the best part of the movie. That's the part that actually really works the best of everything, like, and that's what sells it. Like you said at the end, that's what the buildup is, and 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 the actors gave great performances, but we also had, like, I remember we had quite a lot to work with, in terms of reactions and different shots, and that's why you shoot that's why shooting a lot of coverage and stuff is important. It's not because, like, oh, you need to shoot all these different angles so to make the movie varied. It's like you need that because you need to have ways to cut lines out or to speed things up or to, make jumps or like make something faster or slower. And you need these extra shots to give you that space to kind of do that,
Right.
so that maybe the actor, because it always happens, the actor delivers it in a certain way and you're like, oh man, that's just a little flat. If I could cut, like, because I'll literally, like, when I edit, I'll listen to dialogue before I'll really look at picture. So I'll, if the actor is saying something and I'm like, oh, it's flat, there's too much, dead space when they're talking. If I could cut, like, a few frames in between each word and shorten it up and make it fast so they say it fast,
Right.
great. But then I need to be looking at something else because the picture will be weird there, because you can't jump, you
Right.
can't jump in the picture. So you need a cutaway. So
So
that's why you need all that coverage,
right.
that's what it's really about.
I'll be honest with you. I made sure that we had enough footage on all three actors. Um,
Yeah.
Jose when he was doing his lines, Ronaldo when
Yeah.
he was doing his lines. Then we're looking at Jose as he's saying his lines. We're looking at
Yeah.
Daniela as both saying their lines. So you had, I was aware that, we needed to create this tension there. Otherwise, if that payoff isn't there, we're going to be, we,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. So I thought Rattled, we had all that. And then, but sometimes, I will say, like, if you take Ike Susto, for example, because we were rushing around and we didn't always get tons of coverage. But they just did great. They did great performances because you didn't really have to even cut away from them. You could stay on them and they were kind of holding it, like, and so that they kind of made the actors. I thought the Ike Susto performances were, of the three films we did, kind of the best in a way. Because I mean, no insult to the other ones were great too, but just because they were able to be like, we had less coverage to work with, and they were just kind of inherently more interesting to look at in a way,
it,
like Trulisi and Jesse Cotto, where they just was like, you could just look at them and it was entertaining.
right.
Like something about their delivery was a little idiosyncratic and funny. It was cool to watch them. But the Rattle was much more straight. Their performances were more straight, and you needed that sort of like editing to sort of kind of give it that tension, and you couldn't have just stayed on one person.
Correct. And in Susto, we needed that chemistry, right? So
Yeah.
camera can stay on two of the three characters or all three characters,
Right.
so because they're playing off of each other, and if I don't shoot it, then we miss it, right? Because we
Right.
can't play with each other if I have a shot only of Jesse reacting to what
Right.
Chulisi is saying or AB is saying. I have to make it so that there's a playfulness here that's gonna work.
Right. You see them interacting with, yeah, because that was crucial. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Um,
yeah.
anything that, looking back, like I said, we talked a little bit about Swindle. Anything that you could take away from Rattled or I guess like when everything was said and done, you go, damn, that was I kind of like that scene, or I'm glad
Yeah.
that we did that, or this stood out when everything was said and done. This stood out.
I mean, I'm trying to, we tried to do uh I mean, I guess I liked in IK Suicide, I liked some of the effects we did. Some of them were cheesy. They didn't, but there were a couple there that actually were pretty, kind of came out pretty good, like it was actually like, oh, that's not bad. I think I'm trying to think what I would say about that. Um, yeah, I guess with Rattled, you know, um, I mean, I think that scene, the thing about Rattled that worked. Are you frozen? Or are you good?
No, good.
Oh, okay, okay. The thing about Rattled was was that important. I mean, I think what I about both movies I would say is like they're, of course, all films, but they were flawed. Like every film is flawed, and they had their weaknesses or whatever. But they have to have a payoff in there somewhere. They have to have something. It's almost better to have a film that has an excellent element than a film that an element that really stands out and works, as
Right.
opposed to generally good but not that in nothing much. You know what I mean? Like kind of like I think they both had their flaws, but they both had an element in there that was kind of, as you said, would get the audience to react. Like in I think in Ike Susto, the ending was great, and then also the pulling the heart out of the
Just
was it the yeah, or was it the hand came, no, the hand came
the hand
through
came
came
through and
out, right?
right.
Yeah. And like I think that really worked because no one thought that like some that kind of level of thing was going to happen in that movie. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like you're watching it and it's kind of funny with the goofy music that I put in, and then they're kind of cute, and then all of a sudden boom, it's just like what? Where does that come from? Like, and that really that thing that kind of makes the movie memorable. It's a short film after all.
Right.
Like you just so it's something, right? It has this memorable thing, and that kind of elevates it. And then Rattled, that we really got that tense, that final scene was so really worked. And then that was like that was the thing that really made the movie work. So I guess that's what I would take away from both of them. That you have to sort of have that. It's better to have a moment or a scene or moments that really work, especially with a short film, than just something that looks cool. And even if it looks great, but it just kind of like is at the same level and there's nothing really, you know, that pops.
No, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead. When you were going to say something, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so I think that's something that, I think most of your films that I've seen, usually there's something in there that pops out, that makes you remember the film, So, I think that's one of your strengths. Yeah.
Um, what because I know you're producing and you're also a filmmaker, you also write, you also direct. What's your where do you like to be at? Out of all of that, all the hats that you wear, which one do you like wearing the best?
Oh, I mean, I don't know if because like with the film that you were in and that we made not too long ago, In the Weeds, so it was sort of like all three. I wrote, I directed, and then I edited. And so, I mean, that I enjoy all three things. I think that, you know, they're all, they're all so different. I mean, they're all like, they're quite different, but they're also crucial, like the, if you write and, that's obviously you're creating it. That's the genesis, right? So
Right.
if the basic idea is no good, you're screwed. You're not going to ever have a good movie without a decent script,
That is
or
true.
something, or a decent concept at least. Although with In the Weeds, we didn't have a script till like halfway through the movie. But and then of course, I think shooting is probably the most fun part, because it's just so, it's just in the moment and just like a million things happening. I mean, fun and stressful at the same time, but fun, it's like, that's when you really feel like, oh, I'm making a movie, like you're there. And then the editing is completely different. It's completely chilled out and you've kind of got everything, and the time pressure is gone. But and that's when you start getting like super detailed. You're like, oh, let me move this shot, like tighten this shot up like a little bit, and I can move it a little bit, and oh, I should come in 3 frames earlier. Like it comes down to that, like you one or two frames, earlier on this shot, and and you just get super, super, into the nitty gritty details. So I kind of like all three of those things, for different reasons, but I could see how some people, are more suited for different aspects, of what's going on there.
I'll be the first one to tell you. I mean, I know that it takes a village to put a to put a movie together. So I mean,
Yeah.
and I also know my what I'm fairly good at. That I
Yeah.
okay. This I don't want to tackle. I know editing could be a very tedious, strategic. Uh, and it's not my thing. I mean, I don't mind.
Yeah.
I don't mind sitting with an editor. However, I also like to give the editor the freedom, right?
Right. So
To
you like to, like, basically come in at every, like, do some work, and then I'm going to come in, see where we are, comment,
right,
give my notes. You deal with that. I'll come back. We'll talk, and then
correct.
that's the process of that. Yeah.
Certain editors, they're thinking like, oh shit, don't do that to me because then I got to pull this shit out and I got to take this out and I
Right.
get it, but that's the nature of the beast. You
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah. For sure.
You're not. It's like a writer, right? You don't write just because you wrote it the first time. That's not necessarily the script you're gonna go with. And I
Oh no.
say that the editor needs to give me at least 3 or 4 different looks about the film. But we're working together, and is the script your blueprint? Is
Right.
it like we spoke about how we can deviate, but as long as it's in the realm of the story, uh,
Right.
and you don't deviate that much. And I'm going to
Yeah.
use an Aikasuto example, because we spoke about it, um, in a few minutes. But as long as it's in the realm of the story, we could definitely we could definitely see eye to eye on this thing that we're going somewhere with it.
Right. Right.
We're going to deviate, and that's not the film I had, or what the hell
Right.
is this? Like it's a whole different movie and shit. And you're like, well, how the hell did that
Right.
happen? You know,
Has that ever happened to you? Has that happened to
no,
you? Where you,
no, no.
yeah.
I think it's important to. I think the script is the blueprint. We have an idea of where this story is going to go, and since I mentioned Aikasuto, I remember the beginning of Aikasuto was
Yeah.
um
Totally different.
the idea of there is a haunted place.
Right.
Something happened in this place, and that was going to be the beginning or the setup of the film.
Right. Right.
Then, as the story moves along, we realize that what Trulisi wants to do is go into this place
Yeah.
that we then connect and go, wait a minute, he's going to choose the same place where these murders actually happen.
Right.
Um,
Right.
Holy crap. But as you were editing, you were like,
Yeah.
that shit is just not flying. And
Right.
then you came up with well, you could tell them what the idea was. Go ahead.
Actually, Rip, I'm what would you help me out a little bit? How did we start the movie? I'm like, it was so
So
long ago. I'm
yeah,
like, I was,
so the idea was, so then what you did was you said you started with a cable show, like, oh my God, look at that. That's fantastic. So then we set it up like
oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
if it's a commercial or it's a commercial for the upcoming episode, right?
Right.
Which was in the script, but that wasn't necessarily the first scene. That was probably going to be the second or the third scene. And you
That's right. We just started with that. Yeah.
start with that. And
Mm.
then as he discusses trying to get a real haunted place, then we could incorporate that.
Right.
And that's what happened.
Right. Right.
So when
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
says to me, by the way, this place that you're thinking of going to, this is what happened. And he's like, right. Yeah.
That's right. Okay. Yes. Okay.
Okay. So then when
Yeah.
he goes, right. Yeah. That's when we inserted what was supposed to be the beginning of the film. And it
Yeah.
was because, everybody was like, "Oh shit, they're really gonna go there," So it
Right.
actually worked out for the better. You see, when you
Yeah.
kept again, you didn't really deviate from the story so much.
The concept was the same. We just reordered it and to make it work in a different. Yeah, exactly. I
And
mean,
I
the spirit, and the most important thing was that, I mean, the thing about Ike Susto that works the best is the tone,
right,
the feel of the movie. Like it's kind of, it's kind of funny and goofy and parts, but then some legitimately scary stuff does happen. So it's kind of that mix, which was you had said from the very beginning. I think the reason I even came up with some of the ideas was I think you had referenced like Freaky Friday to me or something like that as like one of the movie had been like you wanted to make like a Freaky Friday kind of thing. And that's totally the tone of
absolutely.
Freaky Friday, that kind of comic and but legitimate horror. Like I just saw with my son, he had never seen it, American Werewolf in
London,
London,
yeah,
and I forgot like just how good the movie was, and just like and it's like super bloody. I mean, it's like it's like got this weird, it's like this funny tone comic, but then it like I don't know if you remember when the last time you saw it, but at the end when the werewolf comes out of like he turns and he goes down this alleyway. It's in the middle of London, and he comes out and like there's just this carnage, like literally like this scene where like 50, 60 people get killed, like they're crashing through cars and just like it's like completely over the top, like John Landis, like a million people dying, and he gets shot and then it zooms out from his naked body or whatever. And it's this crazy mix of like humor and then but the deaths are like really are convincing. He doesn't do them as funny. You know what I mean? They're
right.
like, you know, and that weird mixture, that tension is what makes the movie like work so well.
I still wanted to be campy, but with this level of there's danger here.
Yeah.
We shouldn't. And I think Jesse is really the Jesse Cotto is really the voice of the film.
Yeah.
Like even early on, she goes, "You keep messing with that, shit is gonna happen, and sure
Right. Yeah.
shit is
Yeah.
gonna happen." And
Yeah.
she's like, when she's on the thing in the laptop, and she's doing that little research,
Yeah. Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
"Oh shit," you know.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
She is the tone of the film, and she's
Yeah.
also the
She's
tone
good.
of where I want to go with this. Like
Yeah.
there is this level. It's
He's the
Blake is
danger, and
so
then Chalice
Blake
is
is
the
so
camp.
good
Yeah.
and campy
Yeah.
that we ride with her because
Yeah.
shit's about to happen. We don't know what's gonna happen, but we know some shit is gonna happen. So I
Right. Right.
think that's why that works. And I didn't want to.
Totally.
So I wish if I got special effects, you know, um,
Yeah.
then I would definitely bring it another notch. Which, by the way, I still want to pursue this line of um, comedy horror.
Right.
And I'm using, believe it or not, I'm using Suto as a blueprint for what I want to do in the future because I think it set a particular bar,
Uh
but
huh.
if we raise it, it's got to be in special effects. It's got to
Sure.
be in good acting,
Yeah.
But I also want to keep it. I like the idea of comedy horror, so I want to continue maybe pursuing that. But
Right.
that's in the future. I don't want to give too much away, but I'm
Right. Right.
I'm seriously thinking about that. So
About a part two.
I don't know if it's a part two. Part two was written, but
Yeah.
uh, but the idea of
That genre basically. That
correct.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And there's so many films out there that can be parodied.
Yeah.
So I could see myself trying to pursue that line of without giving too much. I think that's what I wanted. I want to pursue that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
again, I don't want to give too much away because I'm not there yet. But I'm definitely.
Right.
This is
Thinking about it. Yeah.
it's always this thing is always working up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Um, Shifting gears a little here, what are you currently working on, or what are you excited about? Something that you're doing? I know you mentioned In the Weeds. Um, I don't know how much you can say about that film that was done maybe what, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, that movie is we've signed a contract with a distributor, and
Okay.
so they are now out there trying to sell it. So the idea is, I mean, I don't know, it's like these things, you know how it is. It's like you you spend all this time, you do all this stuff, and then you just like sit around and wait for someone else to like, do
But
something. You're just like waiting. So we're waiting for them to sell it. I'm hope we'll see what it ends up on, but probably going to end up on some sort of streaming
platform.
platform. Once we get uh, enough the right money or whatever. So that's happening. I'm doing a little trying my hand at a documentary right now, and in fact, I think we're going to do our first day of shooting next week. We're kind of doing a teaser thing and pitching it to some people about that guy, this rapper named Curious
Okay.
George, who's got a new album coming out. He's like 50 years old and I don't know if he's 50. He's a little under 50, I think. But in 1994, he came out with an album, and he have you ever heard of? Do you know the? Have you ever heard of the Bobito and Stretch hour?
Rich.
Yeah, it was like this big famous rap radio hour thing that was like the Wu Tang Clan got started there, and Busta Rhymes and all these people. And Curious
This was an actual radio station.
it was actually Columbia uh, University gave them 2 hours, or gave them from midnight to 3 in the morning on Thursdays, and it became like the thing.
To hear.
The thing to listen if you were into rap, because rap wasn't as big then, it wasn't quite as big. So it became like, so all the rappers would go to the radio station and rap in the station on live on the mic,
Okay.
So one of those guys, Babito, he wanted to sort of have a bigger, like they were trying to basically get the first big Hispanic MC rapper, because there was this idea that uh, Puerto Ricans, especially more than but Hispanics in general, but especially Puerto Rican community, was very involved in hip hop from an early stage, in the Bronx, the dancing, but they weren't seen. They were seen more as the dancing crews than they were as the actual rappers and DJs. So the idea was they wanted to get like a Hispanic rapper who would make it big, and Curious was the guy that they were going to go with. And he formed a record label. They released Curious's album. It came out the same day as Nas's Illmatic album, which is considered like one of the greatest hip hop albums of all time. So he kind of got bad luck, and various other things happened, and he kind of just fell off the radar to some degree, although he continued rapping all this time, and he just never really got another break. And now, all these years later, he's finally got another album coming out.
Nice.
So it's kind of the story of that, and about the history of.
So it becomes timely because you decided to do a documentary on this, and he's also coming out with an album.
Right. I mean, it's all tied together. Yeah. So Curious and Dom, Dom, the DP from. So we're all kind of going in on it together. We're going to shoot some stuff and cut together a little teaser, and then try, and we have a couple people that we're trying to pitch it to, in that world. So we'll see if that's one thing. And then Dougie Doug and I are also have another script that we've written. Um, and we're trying to follow up on In the Weeds and trying to make the next feature. So those are the big projects right now. Yeah.
And both of them features.
Both of them features. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah.
I like to ask a couple of questions. I've done that to a couple of my guests.
Sure.
I'm
Sure.
going to give you one of those questions right now. Um, is there anybody out there that you are, you have your eye on, whether it be a performer, an actor, an editor, producer, director, a writer, a poet, anybody out there that when you see their work, you go, I gotta check that person out, or that person is interesting enough that I wish the world would know them, but just the way it is, people don't really
Yeah.
this person. Is there somebody that you're looking at that you go, somebody that you want to shout out that you go, that person deserves, a little bit.
Yeah. Actually, there are. I'm trying to remember names now, but like there are some directors out there, young directors, I think, who are pretty, you know, um, you you remember that film, The Green Room?
Oh, but that was an actual, that was actually produced and put together,
Yeah.
by a studio.
Right. But the director of that, who
Oh,
wrote and directed it.
see, now I gotta, you want me to do homework right here on live,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. But he has a new film out now on called something Ridge, uh, um, and which also seems really good.
what's the
Uh,
name of it?
and oh my gosh, I'm not doing well here.
Don't worry, don't worry, I got you.
Try Green Room, the Green Room, the one with Patrick Stewart in it.
All right, so The Green Room is a horror thriller film,
Yeah,
and this was directed by Jeremy Salmier.
yeah, that's it.
That's
Yeah,
the guy. Okay.
and he's got a new film out now that's I think it's called like Heartbreak Ridge or something like that.
Okay.
And it's kind of I don't know if you saw that. Did you see the Green Room?
I did see The Green Room.
Yeah, and so when I saw that, I was like, this is a really smart film because it's kind of a low budget film.
I remember it
And
because I just saw the credits. Patrick Stewart was in that too.
exactly. It was like this low budget film, and he basically took a genre film, but he did a lot of if I just told you the description, you're like, oh, whatever. But then when you see it, he did a lot of very clever, very smart things making it. You could tell this was a guy who just had thought a lot about what he. And so I think this Heartbreak Ridge is similar. I think that's what it's called.
This is the film that I think you're missing the title.
No, I'm messing. That's the one, the Clint Eastwood thing, right? It's
Rebel Ridge.
Rebel Ridge. Yeah, yeah. And so that's another sort of genre thing, but he's kind of done a similar thing. And I was like, you know, I just think he's obviously very talented. He really knows what he's doing. So if he's got a movie, I'll definitely watch it. I mean,
Check them out.
there's a bunch of, it's interesting, it's the movies are in a weird place right now. I think films are, um, a lot of the films I see are very much, the better films are, it's always, they're genre films usually now, like that kind of, I don't know, that big adult, and I don't mean like triple X adult, but I mean like for grown-ups kind of drama film just seems to have really like, that we used to get in the 80s and the 70s and even in the 90s a little bit, where it was like a big budget film, but it wasn't a superhero movie and it wasn't like some take on a horror film or whatever. It was just, you know, those are kind of like gone, like, you know,
Yeah, yeah. I don't. Listen. Sometimes I have to go back to the classics to get re-energized and say, okay, this is
yeah,
supposed to be. And then, but it's not to say like I wouldn't give somebody like Jeremy Saulnier an opportunity, to see
sure.
this film, especially if it's catching on or whatever. So
Yeah.
absolutely, I'm gonna definitely you know, there's another guy, the guy that did X is also another guy that he has got that trilogy going on.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
I
he
haven't
did-
seen any the sort of horror, all the porn, like the
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I haven't seen those. Yeah, but I've
So
heard they're excellent.
yeah, and he's done a fantastic job with that particular film. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. It feels like a lot of the like if you're a young director now and you're trying to make it, it's like horror is definitely the place to go because they're willing to give you a little money to do a horror movie, because they feel
that
like they
guy's
can.
name is
Yeah,
Ty West. I just
yeah, yeah,
yeah, but somebody like Ty West who's doing something different with the genre and
yeah,
gets interesting performances from people.
yeah.
I'm definitely gonna go out there and definitely
Support it. Yeah.
check it out and look forward to seeing. Changing a little bit. I just want to give a shout out to um Edgardo Miranda Rodriguez, who's doing out of all things, La Borinqueña. He does this comic book with
Uh huh.
the writer, the creator of this super heroine, like a superhero. And,
Okay.
and obviously he's getting, he's got a lot of media, but if people have not checked him out or they don't know of him, I want to definitely give him a shout out because it's a comic book, and to make a
Right.
comic book and be successful at it, that's already an achievement. He
Sure.
creates a Boricua superhero, La Borinqueña, who happens to be
Yeah.
a female superhero, no less, um, who stands for social justice, um, Boricua pride, or even
What are her powers?
patriotism, and and that's just I just wanted to
What are her powers? What kind
the
of?
fact that she's an activist, and she takes
I
pride
mean, does she have like superpowers?
and puts things in perspective in regards to teaching the community of
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay.
uh where Puerto Rico has been and whatnot. I want to say that she flies.
Okay. All right. There had to be something,
She
Bezzy.
has to. I saw her with a cape.
Flying is good.
She looked great with a cape.
Okay.
I think she flies. No, no, but just
Okay.
on a serious note, the idea of also teaching, you know, um,
Yeah.
the young guns a little bit about where they're at is also a big. It's pretty. To be honest with you, it's just pretty daring, and I'm pretty sure at first glance you're like, damn, I don't know if they're gonna get it, but
Right.
that he had the guts to say, you know what, I am going to do this and it's gonna work. And it did work,
Sure.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
people and celebrities have rallied around him. I just gotta give it hats off. El Galdo Miranda Rodriguez, you know,
Mm.
is somebody that's worth looking into. If you don't know already who he is, you definitely should check.
Yeah.
Um, real quick here, favorite piece of advice that someone ever gave you or words that you live by?
Mhm. I think that I used to work a lot. I used to work as a as an electric in film doing the lighting gig. I was a gaffer and electric for years.
Okay.
And I think one of my best industry advice that I ever got was from a key grip, and he said, and I do try to live it. It's like if whatever job you take, or whatever he always takes the first job. Like, let's say he's on a job, he finishes whatever he gets offered next, he takes it. It doesn't matter if it's like he doesn't hold off and say, I'm going to get that bigger job over there, and whatever he gets, if once he says yes, he does it. And it doesn't matter if like you get some cool, you take some job, you're not so sure about it, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to edit post film, but and then I get a call for some bigger job. You do what you said you're going to do, and you do the first thing that comes your way. And if you do that over your lifespan, people know they can trust you. They know you're good for your word, and it works, it evens out, so you think that, oh, maybe I'm going to get some bigger thing if I hold out. But that's not how it works in life. It all evens out, and you do those things, and you will get sometimes you get the big high paying job, and sometimes you get the lower paying job. But whatever you do, you do them. You, if you give your word, you do what you said you're going to do, and you do it as well as you do the same effort, and you do as well as you can on all of them. You know, and I think that was very good advice. Yeah.
Um, your favorite film
Ooh, I don't know. It changes a lot. Um,
today? What's your favorite film?
my all-time favorite film. I'm kind of like I'm a bit of a I kind of like art films, so
Okay.
I don't know. Like I'm a bit of a art film snob. I would say I think my favorite film, the film that kind of means the most to me, is actually Fellini's 8.5. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think it's because the first time I saw that film, I was probably like 17 or 18 or something, and I was like, I didn't understand it at all. Like, it was just, it totally like, confused me. Like, because in that movie, he kind of goes from like, about this guy who's kind of remembering, he's having these memories. He's having a crisis of, he's growing. He's supposed to make his next film. He's having a total crisis. Like, he doesn't know what anything means. He can't find meaning in anything. And he keeps having these memories or these fantasies of his youth and all sorts of things. But the movie never gives you a clue when you're in fantasy or not in fantasy. It just kind of like continues on, so you think you're in regular life, but then all of a sudden he'll be like, just start flying up in the air, like a, on a kite or something, and the ending of the movie is this like, really like, I don't know if you remember it's this crazy ending of the movie where he all of a sudden at the end he's directing the movie finally, that he's a movie director, and he goes out and he's standing in this place, and they built this crazy set for him, and he's like, roll the camera, and all of a sudden these people start coming parading around him, and it's like everybody from his life, and they're just like going, and that's how the movie ends, with all these hundreds of people, like all of the memories he had parading around him, very like allegorical. It's obviously not real. It's like, it's like, it's symbolic of him, and I wasn't really like, when I saw it, I wasn't used to that. We don't see a lot of movies. Regular cinema doesn't do that, like that we see. Like, they don't do symbolism. They don't do allegory.
Correct.
It's all very straight, and so I was like, what the hell is that? But I remember thinking the movie was beautiful. It was really cool looking, but I didn't really get it. And then, but actually I went and watched it again, like a couple days later, because I was intrigued, and then the second time I saw it, I was like, oh, and all of a sudden it was like, I totally got it. And I was like, I couldn't even actually remember why I was confused. I couldn't figure out why I hadn't gotten it the first time.
But
It's like,
and you know, it's been a while since I've seen it, and
yeah,
that's probably it, right? When we're in, take somebody like myself, when I'm in film school, and they give me all these films to watch, including 8.5.
yeah,
Even then, right? You look at it for the first time. Obviously, this is a film that deserves a second viewing, a third viewing,
yeah,
so that you can really grasp, right? So if you're not in the mood and you're like, "What the fuck is going on?" And you're like,
right.
"And I gotta start," and meanwhile you're saying, "Shit,
Yeah. Because it's a
my
movie
bad."
that's not trying to necessarily entertain you,
Correct. So other,
which is not something that's not the Hollywood model. Like we go to a movie, it's like, entertain me. I want to forget, but like, that's a movie. He's not trying to entertain you. You know, he, he, he probably doesn't even care about you. Actually, he's like, he's like it's about him, and he's like working
Story
through
of
the stuff,
Philly or both.
you know, yeah. But I mean, I don't know, and I've probably seen that movie, I don't know, 20, 30 times, in my life since then. I'll watch it every now and again, to just to, I don't know, you know, just to remind myself that there's a different, we have certain ways of thinking about films, and you know, and people, there's all these things people always say, like it's all about the story, well, that movie's not about the story. There's like barely any story in it at all. It's like, you know, it, I mean, it's about a guy. It's basically that the story of that movie is, you know, he has to make a movie and he can't think of what to make a movie about. It's kind of like it's the equivalent of like the teacher's like, you hand in your paper and it's like, I couldn't think of what to write my paper about, so I'm writing about how I couldn't think. Like
Exactly. The thought of how not to write
yeah,
the paper because
exactly,
that's what's in my head. And that's what
exactly. You know. So I mean, but it's totally, like it's like completely brilliant. So I mean, I think I like to watch it just to remind myself that they're different. This actually the art form is very broad. We tend to narrow it down and do a very that version of you know
right.
of what film is. If you go to the theater, you see a very narrow version usually.
Mhm, mhm.
But it's actually very broad, and there's a lot of different ways that it can be approached.
Got you. Favorite word. Your favorite
Favorite what?
favorite word.
My favorite word. Oh my gosh. Hmm. Favorite word. That's a hard one. Let me see. Like, hmm. I think my favorite word is just because of the sound,
Yeah.
or the meaning. My favorite word for sound is dodecahedron. I don't know. I like the way it sounds. I don't even know what it means. I think it's the shape of like a
Say it
12-point shape.
again.
Huh?
Say that word.
Dodecahedron. Dodecahedron. It's a good sound. I don't know.
I think you
I don't
just
know.
made that up.
Huh?
I think you just made that up.
No,
That is a
it's
word?
an actual word.
That
Hmm?
is a word.
It's an actual word. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Say it again.
It's a math word.
Say it again.
Dodecahedron. It's
Sure.
dodecahedron.
Okay.
It's like it's a 12-sided object.
Folks, we all got homework to do. Go ahead. It's a 12-sided one.
My favorite, your favorite word. What's your favorite word?
Come on, man. I'm doing the questions here. Come on. You don't get
No, no. Is it a
you don't get
Spanish word? Oh, come on. Is it a Spanish word or what?
my favorite word? I think
Yeah, your favorite word.
my favorite word is belief or believe. You have to believe in yourself in order
Oh, okay.
to be, you have to believe in yourself.
Yeah, yeah,
So my favorite word is
yeah.
that idea of, believing in something and actually, you know, s- staying focused and doing. But you have to
Yeah.
believe. If not, you're gonna get sidetracked with everything else. You're gonna doubt yourself. People hate you.
Sure.
They're gonna say you're not talented enough, you're not good enough, But if you have the belief and you stand sturdy and you're focused, um, and you believe that this is your calling, you know
Mm,
you're gonna go. It doesn't matter. You're just gonna go straight through.
yeah. Yeah.
Because you're not all that noise. You're just gonna let that. It's not important to you.
Yeah.
Belief is here, and it's here and it's here. It's in your heart and in your head. You're gonna go for
Yeah.
it. But
Yeah.
Clayton, you don't get to interview me. Um, any last thoughts? If people are seeing this and they don't know who you are, what should they take away from this when they see this interview with you or this little chat that we've had? What should they? Is there something that you want people to know about you that you say, you know what? I'm Clayton Allis. What? What should they take away from this?
Um, I mean, I think. I guess the thing I would say is that I, and not about me in particular, but if there's something out that I kind of wish that people would take away, is that in general, is that I th- I would like people to become. I think that we need to kind of concentrate and think about our craft and what we do, and not so much about, I think fame or whatever. Don't the Thinking about the end goal is, I think, a mistake. I think you have to be invested in the path and in the journey and what you're doing, and and each step of that journey you need to sort of like try to do your best and try to concentrate on that and try to be open to that. I mean, I think, well, one thing I've learned, and I mean, I think you've been ahead of me. You're probably ahead of me on this, is that, I always was very like, I'm going to write it and direct it and blah, 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 do everything, and you said it takes a village. And I think that's very true. And there's a process, and at any moment in that, you have to believe in the process, and you have to kind of invest in the process of what you're doing. You have to have faith that, or belief, I guess, that you're going to get to a place that's worthy and worthwhile. And I think if you invest and believe in each step of the process as you move along, you're guaranteed to get to a place that's worthwhile, because the journey was worthwhile. I guess that'd be my little, you know,
Listen,
thing.
and on that note, I think this is going to conclude our little
Okay.
folks.
Sounds good.
Always remember, it does not have to be your final shot, but you got to take a shot.
Oh, there you go. I need one of those, man. Oh, wow.
Good. Listen,
What is it?
fun, Clayton. What was that?
What was you taking a shot of?
I was taking a shot of a little bit of tequila there,
Oh, okay. Nice. Yeah.
but I was drinking wine, so I don't know how that's gonna go.
Yeah. That's
We'll figure that out.
yeah. Yeah. I like. Yeah, I think
Listen.
it's not good to go up in
All right,
alcohol.
whatever. But listen, it was a good time.
It was
Yeah, always fun. Good night.
all right, my man.
All right. Take care.
Take it easy.
Absolutely.